Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei x Artmis x Mudesa x Aphrodite. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Eaton for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Greek mythology is an important part of our history. Anybody should know about how Zeus beat his father with the help of his siblings. Everyone should know about Jason, Hercules and even Perseus. These were heroes of the Greek pantheon, and great heroes have great legends. Great legends that throughout time have stuck with us. Today, a new legend was born. In the form of a small boy named Issei. Or Ice for short. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we can learn about the legend that is Issei, we must first know the legend of the greatest beast in all of Greece. He was the first dragon. He was the first monster. He was the father to all that is terrible and destructive in our world. He is Tios. Long ago. In the early days of the Greek pantheon, Gaia, the goddess of earth, had a son. This son was Tios. He can be depicted as many things. A serpent, a dragon, a great four-legged beast. It didn't matter what you believed Tios looked like. Because Tios would always take shape of your greatest fear. When Zeus had beaten the Titans in the Great War, he had awoken a slumbering Tios. He decided to just ignore the gods and Titans and continue to slumber. Some historians considered this to be the first strike against Zeus. Soon enough, Zeus and his siblings killed and imprisoned the Titans. However, Zeus had decided to imprison the Titans in Tios' home. Enraged, the great beast awoke and roared the most atrocious roar ever heard by the pantheon of Greece. The roar had blown Zeus all the way to Mount Olympus. Tios was so enraged by Zeus he had challenged the new king of Greece for his throne. Their battle had lasted a century. Tios had almost won, if not for his own mother's betrayal who gave Zeus his signature lightning bolts. Zeus used his newfound weapons to defeat Tios in such a manner that nothing remained of his body. Only his very soul. Deciding it not be enough, Zeus used all of his might to keep Tios trapped in a gauntlet for all eternity. The gauntlet was known as the monster sphere and was trapped in the darkest dungeon in Greece. The dungeon was so dark not even Apollo with the power of the sun could light his way through the dungeon. Some had tried to reach Tios, the fools believed they could control his power. Tios, however, was still conscious while in the monster sphere. He had roared in silence. Only those who had ever touched the gear itself heard the enraged cries of the father of all monsters. They had gone mad by just the slightest touch of the gear. The men who tried to control the awesome power that is Tios went completely crazy. For many years, Tios roared in silence. For many centuries his cries went unheard. But one day, Hercules, the greatest hero in all of Greece, had finally completed all of his 12 trials. His power was that equal of the gods themselves. However, his greed only grew more and more. His lust for power drove the hero completely mad. He went on a killing spree of all those who wished to face him. Olympus, the great Greek hero's nephew, caught word of the monster gear. He had heard that for those ever worthy of wielding the gear, they could wield the power of Tios himself. Wanting to impress his uncle, Olympus told Hercules of the monster gear. In his lust for power, Hercules sent himself immediately towards the prison of Tios. Zeus quickly caught word of his son's journey to gain his rival's power. He feared that his son would soon overpower him and take Mount Olympus for himself. In a fit of rage and fear, Zeus took the monster gear from its prison and flung it towards the ocean. Eaton used his power of the sea to send it to an uninhabited island of the coast of Asia. For nearly 10 years, Hercules searched the dungeon in hopes to find the ultimate power. Power to overpower the entire Greek pantheon by himself. For 10 years Hercules searched high and low, in complete darkness for the monster gear. Only to find nothing but an empty pedestal. Finding his way back, Hercules confronted his father in his rage. He accused his father of taking what was rightfully his. He cursed Zeus for taking the monster gear from him. He cursed Zeus, telling him he would search for eternity for the power of his father's rival. Even if he had to kill the ones he loved. Hercules threw away his title of hero and went on an indefinite search for the monster gear. Some say you can still see Hercules search the earth, the seas, and the very stars themselves for his prize of the monster gear. Zeus in sadness sealed away the pantheon and Mount Olympus for many centuries. The many mythical creatures and demigods were sealed away with them. To create almost a second earth of only those seen as myths to the human eye. This continued for many years. Until one day, the pantheon convinced the king of the Olympians to let the walk among them. To expand their borders to the other pantheons in hopes of a mighty alliance. An alliance strong enough to hold themselves against whoever may wield the monster gear. Be it Hercules or another. Agreeing, Zeus let forth his pantheon to the world in secret. To create the mightiest force ever seen in all of the worlds, from any pantheon. Zeus grew confident with his army, and soon, the Greek pantheon lived a life of peace and prosperity. No entered and no one left Mount Olympus. Nothing new entered their borders for many years. Others than those of the Alliance. Soon, the gods grew bored of their thrones. But that boredom wouldn't last long. Not long at all. You may be wondering what came of the monster skier when Poseidon pushed it to the island. For many years Tios stayed on the shore of the island. Until one day, he sensed someone. Or something that was worthy of wielding his power. He used all of his remaining power to control the monster skier to infuse himself with whatever was worthy of wielding his powers. He did not know, however, that the one mighty enough to wield him was a baby. His name was Issei. A small boy born exactly at the very second of the turn of the second millennium. On January 1st of the year 2000 BC, Issei was born into the world, unknowing of the mighty power within him. Yuhaha. Hello, my host. You have been granted my immeasurable power by the father of all evil beasts Tios. Tios spoke to the barely even 1 minute old boy. Tios' response to in his words meansing entrance was a bunch of incoherent babbles. You are my first host, the one who can wield the most powerful of all Greek myths. How can a mere baby hold the power to wield me? Enraged, Tios continues to rant curses to the Olympians in ancient Greek. Using the baby boy's eyes like his own, Tios sees a white room with multiple people with masks and mysterious bright white lights. What sorcery is this? He questions to himself. His answers were more babbles from the baby boy, who started to clap in laughter, finding the very god of monsters absolutely hilarious. On the outside, in the hospital room, Issei looked to be doing what every child would do. But in Issei's mind, Tios was screaming. He went from one prison to another. And this one seemed to be worse than the monster skier. It will be years before you can even understand the words I speak. Oh, Zeus, how am I going to survive being in a baby for 5 years? Tios wanted nothing more than at least a strong host. And he got an innocent baby boy. He thought about molding him like a ball of clay into the perfect warrior. To gain his revenge on Zeus. Wanting to plan some more, Tios went into a 5-year sleep. At least enough to have Issei be coherent to a giant monster in his head. Tios snickered at the thought of Issei having a nightmare of whatever ghoulish creature his mind would imagine Tios as. Maybe a giant spider. A demonic dragon. A vampire that has come to suck his blood. The possibilities were endless. Tios also began to strategize how to mold Issei. Would he have the child run away to train? To not only hone his mind and body, but the magic of the ancient Greeks. Issei was like a blank sheet of paper that Tios was willing to draw a weapon. Little did Tios know that Issei wouldn't just any weapon. Under Tios' tutelage, he would become the ultimate weapon. 5 years later, Issei was raised normally as a boy. His chocolate brown hair was the same color as his mother's and father's. However, they could never figure out something. It was his eyes. The hiatus Issei's family name, all had brown eyes. But Issei's were emerald green. No relative on either side of Issei's family ever had green eyes. The doctors say it was a mutation, and that Issei was the first in his family to ever have green eyes. Issei was currently walking home with his best friend Irina. The girl had light orange hair and 2 twin tails, and oddly enough, she had purple eyes. Irina's family, unlike Issei's, did have natural purple eyes which some would say were very exotic. It was currently spring of their first year in kindergarten. The trees were blooming in the most elegant manner. And the chill left the small children of Issei's hometown of Kuo to keep their coats on. The two friends were talking about video games and trading cards on their way back home. On the sidewalk, they skipped, ran and jumped all the way home. I'm telling you. My level 100 Charizard could destroy your measly Venusaur any and every day. Irina pouted. Her cheeks puffed out in a childlike manner which made Issei stick out his tongue. Nuh-uh. Venusaur has frenzy plant that would destroy your Charizard. I'll show you. Come on, let's go to my home. Huh. Issei was going past his house. A simple bland 2-story building which practically screamed suburban family. He had pushed open the gate to his home. Thinking nothing of the fact that it was unlocked. Which it usually isn't. What caught Issei's attention, however, was the fact that the front door was currently inside the house. Blown off of its hinges. It was down the hallway, somehow the wood bent around what seemed to be a massive fist-shaped dent. Issei looked absolutely terrified. Irina, I think you should go home, can you get your dad or something? I think something happened. Issei looked to his best friend who quickly nodded and ran home. It was a couple block away from Issei's house. With his curiosity getting the better of him, Issei tiptoed into his house. It was completely silent. Not a sound in the entire home. Which was strange, because both his mother and father had their days off and would at least say a welcome home. Issei continued to tiptoe throughout the home. The silence of his usually warm house had fear creep into Issei's heart. The house itself looked like a tornado had gone through it twice over. The couches and chairs were flipped over. Vases and plants were shattered on the ground. His cabinets were torn from the walls. Whoever had broken into the 5-year-old's home was looking for something. And he was strong. Dents along the wall seemed to say the man, whoever he was enraged. Oddly enough, Issei's room was left completely untouched. His room was on the second floor. His parents' room was down the hall. When Issei set his backpack on the bed silently, he turned to his door. However, Issei left the door closed when he entered his room. When he turned from his bed to the door, a man stood there. The man was a beast. At least 7 feet tall, if not more. He looked like a bodybuilder times 100 in muscle mass. His muscles were literally bulging from his body. Multiple veins were nearly pooping from his body. His neck was broader than Issei's entire torso. That didn't scare Issei though. What did scare him was the man's skin. It was almost gray in color. It looked like it had slowly been decaying over a century. His eyes were glowing red with rage and anger. Issei didn't even realize, but he had fallen on his butt in fear. The man took one giant step forward. Not even a foot away from Issei's toes. The man leaned down onto one knee. "So it's you." His voice rumbled the house itself. It left the poor boy quaking in fear. "For centuries I searched for my prize, and I find it here in a small feeble boy. Not even a challenge for my final trial." The man rushed his hand for the boy's neck at such speed if it made an impact it would have crushed his throat. Issei squeaked in horror and ducked underneath the massive muscle. He ran towards his parents' room. "Help. Mom. Dad." Issei screamed. Unfortunately, it fell on deaf ears. Or to be more accurate, dead ears. Issei burst through his parents' room. The walls were white, with a tan ceiling and carpeted floor. The bed, king-size bed, was an odd red that stuck out from the rest of the white room. Thunderous footsteps were heard. Slowly but surely the dark-skinned man would soon claim Issei's life. Issei quickly jumped onto his parents' bed, trying to shake the two bodies that were staying eerily silent. Taking a closer look, Issei saw dark purple bruises around both of the two adults' necks. It was as if the man had choked them with only one hand. Their eyes stayed open and unmoving as their s never rose. Issei gasped in horror and jumped off the bed, running backward until he hit the legs of the man. The man grabbed Issei with one hand by the throat. Pathetic, he sighed, reeling his arm back, about to punch the already choking boy to death. "And to think I spent centuries searching for a battle to find no battle at all." Issei let out one final screech of defiance to whoever this man no monster was. The monster merely chuckled, as his fist was sent soaring to the 5-year-old's face. Only to hit a shield of green energy. "Hercules," a voice said. To Issei, he nearly pissed his pants at the voice of what seemed to be another monster. Hercules, however, widened his eyes in shock and terror. A smile crept along his face. Tios would finally accept him as his one and only host. "You dare touch my host, what kind of hero are you? You killed the poor boy's parents for Zeus' sake. You seem quite mistaken if you believe someone like you deserves my power. You are sorely mistaken." The shield quickly expanded and pushed the disgraced hero through the far wall. "Run, child. He will surely kill you if you do not run." The voice echoed in Issei's mind, who quickly nodded. Who are you?" he screamed aloud, to which the voice sighed. "Run first. Questions later, child. But I am the one saving your life, now do as I say and run." Issei put both hands on his head at the volume that the god of monsters used inside the 5-year-old's head. Issei looked around to find a window that would let out to the street. "Jump. I shall protect you." Issei decided to trust the voice in his head that was trying to save him from that monster. Taking a few steps back, he ran towards the window. Putting both arms in an X fashion, he ran through the window and towards the ground. Issei hurtled towards the street below him. Closing his eyes, he prayed for the voice to somehow to save him. But by closing his eyes, he missed a large green circle appears with what looked to be a green dragon in the center. With runes surrounding the circle, Issei la Philadelphia through it without even noticing. This was the last time would ever see Issei for many years, as the 5-year-old never even touched the street below him. Hercules rushed through the window after him. He smashed his feet on the ground, making a crater in the earth. He looked left, then right. He grunted and sniffed the air. He ran towards a direction in the west, creating craters in his wake. He would have his prize. The ultimate power. Even if it cost him his life. Howling as a wild animal, Hercules charged for his final trial. To kill Issei Haidu and take the monster's gear for himself. He shall soon surpass the throne on Olympus and destroy his father and all the weakling gods with him. 2 weeks later. Sniff, why am I alone, Tai-san? Sounds like T-san. Issei was held up in a cave off the Greek coast on the mythical island Issei, where Tios was buried. He wanted to train Issei in a familiar place without interruptions. The 5-year-old had already built some muscle mass and was able to summon the monstrous gear. The gear itself was terrifying. An aqua-green gauntlet with sharp knuckles and fingertips were followed by a yellow orb that healed part of Tifo's power. Swirling metal that looked like tentacles ran up the gauntlet's arm to make it seem like the entire gear was some sick squid. Yellow spikes run up the sides of the gauntlet that are razor sharp to the touch. But right now, Issei had been crying for the day. He had a nightmare about his parents' lifeless bodies. Tios himself had to explain to the young child what death was and how his parents were gone for good. Tios himself healed sympathy towards the child, he had been a father as well. Well, he still was a father, but never a really good one. But to see a child alone was one of the worst gut feelings Tios had ever felt. Go to bed, child, we will continue for some while until you are ready for the world around you. And Greece is the least of your problems, other than Hercules. I believe you may find some allies sooner than later. Tios said, trying to keep the hopes up of the small child before him. When he was crying, it was the fear of being alone. Really, he thought to Tios. It was more of an inward scream than a thought, however. If Tios had ears to cover, he would have done so. Issei had developed monophobia in the past 2 weeks of being on Issei. He always felt alone, without being able to see Tios, who was his only company, only brought more fear. Even as he slept, Issei was afraid. As Tios takes form as someone's greatest fear, which Issei's was being alone, Issei saw nothing. Nothing except an empty white expanse. Issei had dreamt of the expanse and trained with the voice of Tios for the past week in magic, while he trained his physical body during the day. As Issei dreamed, he trained in the art of illusions and enchantments. Such as making Issei look like a massive dragon or enclosing someone in an invisible box that would continue to shrink until they were completely crushed into nothingness. Tios also had to teach Issei in the basics of reading and math and the sciences. With Tios only knowing how to read and write ancient Greek, he accidentally taught Issei a whole new language. As the weeks went on, Issei continued to grow stronger. After another 3 weeks of physical and magical training, Issei unlocked the first of many powers of the monster skier. That being the ability to obtain the powers of Typo's children. The first indication of this was on the 5th week of his training. Issei had suddenly fainted. Instead of Tios calling out to him, a new voice spoke. Well, I'll be damned. He actually got a host. The voice spoke. It was almost smooth in its tone, but it was definitely female. Who are you? Issei called into his own mind space. I am the Lernian Hydra. The greatest of Tifo's children. I hold the power of ultimate regeneration and the ability to dissolve all those who dare oppose me. The beast screamed in pride. In Issei's mindscape, he saw a large purple beast with many heads and razor-sharp teeth. One of the many heads leaned down. Issei guessed it being the most powerful one. It is good to meet you, young master. I hope you use my powers well. For now, I must speak to my father about all that has happened while I slept. I shall see you in the morning. Good night, young master. And with that, the creature broke his connection with his new master and let the poor child rest. The next day, when Issei awoke, he was greeted by 2 voices. Haha. I knew you could do it, Issei. You summoned the first of my many children. And to think it was Hydra. I'll have to train you twice as hard to master his powers and my own. Issei gulped at the fear of him having to train with whatever the Hydra's power held. Do not fret, young master, we will be with you every step of the way. And by the way, your training, I do believe that you shall summon more of Tifo's great power. The Hydra added. Making Issei slump back in his cave in relief. He wondered how his control of the Hydra's power will increase his strength. Sighing in aspiration, he couldn't wait for more of Tifo's power. It was another few months on Issei. Issei's birthday had come and gone. He was now 6 years old and worked harder than ever in his small life. His only birthday present came from the Hydra. It came in the form of his weapon, the Lernian flail. It was a dastardly purple iron weapon. With a ball and chain with wicked spikes at the end. The chains were intentionally weak. Because just like the creature it was named after, whenever a ball and chain broke, 2 more took its place. And after a month's worth of hard training, he had amassed 9 balls and chains in total. The wicked weapon could increase the chain link's length at will. It was also enhanced by Tifos, who enchanted it with a spell, making sure the weapon would never flail around and hit the one who was wielding it. You've been doing a great job so far, young master. By the end of the year, I believe you can unlock one of my siblings' powers, but only if you train hard enough. The Hydra spoke. Issei, she was like the aunt that he never had. She was calm and collected and taught Issei how to properly treat a woman. Even though she was a beast herself. Issei thanked the beast and continued to wail on a boulder. Over the past year, he had shrunk the boulder to half its size with a flail. The 9 spiked balls did heavy damage to those that weren't made of solid stone, so it was pretty effective. During the night, the Hydra would teach Issei her magic. They are acidic-based spells, from poison breath to shooting acid from his fingertips. The young hero had become incredibly masterful of the art. The only downside of obtaining the Hydra's power was having his blood transform into a powerful acid. The first week Issei had obtained the Hydra's, it had felt like his blood was burning him from the inside. That was because it literally was. And let Issei tell you. Having your blood turn into acid hurts a lot. More than you would think. Issei grimaced at the thought of that week. From burning tears to scrunching up in his cave and holding out the pain. And with the blood finally passing, his pain tolerance skyrocketed. The 6-year-old could probably pull out his teeth without flinching because of the pain that is his blood. And as Issei grew in strength and acidic magic, his illusions place fear into your mind. Even if they wanted to conquer their fears, they could never break free from his mind imprisonments. Tios watched through Issei's eyes as his ultimate weapon grew in strength. He could surpass most high-class devils at the age of 6. Issei surpassed Tios' expectations by a long shot, and if he was this strong now, who knew what the future for Issei held. It's been another year for Issei on Ischia Island. He's seen no sign of any other sentient life on the islands. The only living creatures there was a slew of animals from Greek legends. From tigers, lions, and bears, they provided at least some sort of food for the now 8-year-old Issei. The animals also provided a challenge for Issei whenever they found his cave. But soon the animals of Ischia left the child alone, and some even ran in fear. You are getting soft with your training. You need a challenge other than bears and a boulder. A female voice spoke into the child's head. The Hydra, or as Issei now calls her Hai-sama, became much of an older sister figure to Issei. She taught him how to cook with acidic blood. Which for some odd reason tasted really good used in very, very small amounts. My daughter is right, Issei. Just after 3 years on this island and you have been proven to outmatch even the greatest beasts here. However, there is one final test for you here in my prison. A great beast still lives in my dungeon. Still believing my gauntlet is stuck down there. If you can strike her down, I do believe we can send you off to my next destination planned. Tios spoke. The voice sounded incredibly intimidating to all those who would hear him other than Issei. Having grown up with a voice in his head, he found Tios' voice one of the most relaxing things he could have heard. Really, does that mean I can escape the island if I beat him? Who is she? Who is she? Issei said aloud. With no sentient life on the island, no one could hear the 8-year-old and his excitement of escape. She is the beast of the sea. A horrific monster that can only be defeated by my power. It's ironic, is it not? Ino is her name. She would guard me only at twilight as she tried to seduce Poseidon. It was in that time Zeus flung me out of my prison. And she never knew that I was gone. Now go defeat Ino, the beast of the sea. Yes, Tai-sama. I'll destroy her. Then we can go and fight people. Ooh. I can't wait. Do you think I can beat Ino, Hai-sama? I do believe you have a good chance of destroying her. With my father's illusions and my flail. But do not underestimate Ino. She can hold her own against Poseidon. Our best bet is to trick her before you crush her head. We shall watch that bitch burn in Tartarus. That's a little harsh, Hai-sama. Do you not like Ino? She guards my father for eternity. How can I not hate her? She uses illusions to mask herself as the White Lady, and it disgusts me. She should use fear as a tactic to destroy any intruders. She should not be some sort of seductress. The Hydra nearly screamed in Issei's head. Making the boy crouch down with his hands over his ears. You said it, daughter of mine. We can't let that bitch stand any longer. Issei, show the world that Tios is back. Let that bitch be the first to see my power return to the mortal world. We shall take this world by storm. I have plans for you, Issei. Let it be known that on this day you will now become the son of Tios. Issei was about to get up and charge towards wherever Ino was. But Tios' last sentence made Issei stop. What? Son of Tios, I can't be your son. I'm just a human. Issei protested. His mind was in a mix of happiness to get another father figure, but also utter confusion. What on earth do you mean? Can't be my son, that is pure blasphemy. I am the father of all monsters. And you are one too. You, my boy, have the blood of the Hydra coursing through you and the powers of my children and I. And soon enough, as your power grows, you could be the very god of monsters. Think about that, Issei. As my son, you will be the almighty beast. And with my powers, we shall take this world by storm. What do you say, son? Become one of my children and become the strongest monster ever known. I promise I won't let you down, Tai-sama. I'll become the very god of monsters. We'll take this world by storm. Then I can protect my family. And we can bring the monsters back to their original power. As the greatest beasts to be feared. Issei yelled. His dream now set, he ran towards Tios' prison to defeat Ino the sea beast. That's my boy. Let's bring back the monsters. Go, my son. And don't forget about making as many grandchildren as possible. The grandchildren. In Tios' dungeon. The dungeon was a dark cave. Issei had been traveling the cave for hours now. Searching for Ino. It was said that men could be lost in here for decades without ever seeing the light of day. Luckily, with the help of Tios, Issei had dark vision that made the cave seem as bright as day. It really was handy. After a rather heated discussion on why Tios wanted grandchildren from his newfound son, Tios explained that the monsters of mythologies were on the decline. Hero reincarnations were taking out Tios' children left and right. And now there weren't enough to bring back the monster faction without making more grandchildren. Now Issei didn't have that heat kind of thing that other creatures like dragons or wolves have. The thing is that Issei was just always horny. Tios had boasted about the times he had with his wife. And many ways to pleasure a woman. Whether human or beast. Which completely scarred the 8-year-old. Who now knew how babies were made. Let's just say that Issei had a very traumatizing time in the dungeon. And the Hydra had even suggested a harem. Which now Issei learned that Tios and all his children were wild perverts. Beyond human comprehension. Issei took a silent vow then and there to never become a pervert like his new father and older sister. Where is Ino? Tai-sama, hi Sama, do you have any ideas? Issei said. Tired of walking around? I'm more surprised that you haven't fallen flat on your face yet. You have quite a large amount of stamina. Definitely going to be a turn on for all those ladies you're going to be turning into drooling fuck. Hi Sama, do you have any ideas where Ino might be? Actually, you don't have to look much farther. I sense Ino's presence, take a right here and show that bitch what you can do. Issei followed Tios' command and started running and took a hard left. Crashing into a woman so beautiful that Issei just sat there in awe. A beautiful woman stood in front of him. A flowing white and gold dress flowed past her feet and dragged behind her. She had perfect pearly white skin and golden eyes that Issei thought he would fall into a trance just by looking at them. She had dark nut hair like Issei's and a crown of what just seemed to be pure light. In her hands was a single golden harp as she played through a song. Oh. The trespasser, it has been such a long time since we've had one of those and a cute one at that. Issei thought he would faint at the pure sight of her beauty. Even at 8, he could still tell what was beautiful and what was ugly. Her voice almost had the power to command him and let her do whatever she wished to do with him. Ino suddenly pulled out a spear out of seemingly nowhere. It was as if it was carved completely from marble. I'm sorry cutie, but you're going to have to die. I don't want to disappoint Poseidon. Run Issei. It's an illusion. She is actually a terrible squid creature. Suddenly, pictures of a terribly ugly light blue squid flashed through Issei's mind, breaking Ino's illusion and spell on Issei. Issei summoned his flail and the monster skier which made Ino take a step back. Before she could even respond, Issei cast an illusion on Ino to make him look like Tios. She screamed. Tios. How did you escape? That is none of your business Ino. All you need to know is that I have returned and that you are going to be the first one to die by my hand. I shall recreate a world of monsters starting with your death. Issei yelled. He had to say that this won his best impression of Tios yet. Ino screamed once more as she dropped her spear and started to run. Issei, using his speed, caught up to the fleeing sea monster. He knew Tios was feared. But he didn't think he was that scary. He summoned his flail and brought it down onto one of Ino's legs, crushing it underneath the force. The now crippled Ino screamed in pain. This is vengeance for guarding my prison Ino. Let it be known on this day that Tios had returned. Issei did another fantastic impression of Tios as he brought the Lernian flail onto the head of the sea creature. Her physical illusion changed as her death was made clear. Now a disgusting blue squid. Issei removed his own illusion as he spat on the body of the creature. As Issei began to walk out of the dungeon, he tripped over the spear that Ino had dropped, making both Tios and the Hydra to laugh. Issei stood up and was about to kick it back to its owner before the Hydra spoke up. Issei, wait. Take that spear. You'll need it to swim through Poseidon's territory unnoticed tomorrow. And it might be useful later. Who knows? Issei paused. As he picked up the spear, he used some magic to absorb it as he did with the Lernian flail. Today marks the day that Issei Tiffin, the new son of Tios, started his quest to bring back the monsters. He couldn't wait for what tomorrow held as Tios explained on their way to Ino that Tios would teleport him to a new island with many more difficult challenges ahead. With his combat prowess proven, Issei left his father's dungeon and back to his home. For one final night of rest. Issei's mindscape. When Issei slept, he felt a pull of power in his mindscape. As Issei slept, he usually had a conversation with Tios or the Hydra. They would tell him stories of their greatest feats and biggest accomplishments. During these times, Issei learned that the Hydra had a fear of fire. As the great hero, Hercules used it to cauterize her heads until her soul had to leave for the Lernian flail. Tios taught him on ways to work his way into a woman's heart. He tried covering his ears, but that doesn't really work when it's a voice literally in your head telling him how to cook and choose different ways to choose the right flowers. But tonight was different. Before he could start talking to the Hydra, he was suddenly pulled to another realm. When Issei opened his eyes, he could tell this wasn't usually his mindscape. He was in a beautiful garden with golden flowers and fruits. As he walked and stared in awe, he finally reached the back wall of the garden. It was atop a hill that a tree with golden apples stood. Circling the base of the tree was a navy blue dragon. Heads swarmed the tree. With thin long necks and eyes that could remind someone of rubies, he stared in awe of the magnificent beast. Issei just stared at the creature as he slowly trudged his way up the hill. He guessed since his footsteps were the only sound in the entire garden he had awoken the beast. By the time he had reached the base of the tree, all the heads were up and about, twirling around each other playfully. Excuse me? The 8-year-old started. Which got the attention of all the heads. All of which had stopped and turned to the small boy. One of the heads leaned forward. It was the largest out of all of them. His head seemed too heavy for his neck and body to hold him. But as if it were magic, his head held high in the air. Oh. Did father finally find a worthy host? This is magnificent. Excellent. Truly excellent. What is your name, boy? The beats howled. I say Tiffin. I'm the son of Tiphos, and I'm the one who is going to bring back the monster faction. The small boy said. Which got the dragon creature stand and spread his wings. They were absolutely massive. But instead of trying to fly away, the wings brought Issei into a large hug. Yes. Did father bring you into the family, huh? It is good to have a new baby brother to tease. I am Layton. The mightiest of all of Tiphos' children. I am the 100-headed dragon. Guardian of the Garden of Hesperides. I shall grant you my power to bring back out faction. Now come, I have to speak with my father about your new training regiment. Layton screeched as he started to dote on his new brother. But Hai Sama said she was the mightiest of Tiphos' children. Issei stammered from the hug of the 100-headed dragon. Who is this Hai Sama you speak of? She must clearly not who I am. Issei's new brother cried. She's the Lernian Hydra. I have her blood and everything. Issei said. Now free of Layton's clutches. The Hydra said that, did she? Layton did a motion that Issei would assume would be cracking his knuckles if he had regular fingers. Looks like I'll have to show her who is the most fearsome of Tiphos' children. Tiphos finished now, you best get up, baby brother. It looks like our father has brought you to your new training grounds. And it looks like you have some company. When Issei woke up, he expected a few things. Maybe he would be tied above a volcano or be surrounded by beasts. What he didn't expect was to be surrounded by beautiful women all holding notched arrows to his head. Fear-stricken, Issei sat up, which led the women to pull their arrows back and about to release. Wait. Issei nearly screamed. As he stood up with his hands in the air. Hold your fire. A voice spoke up. Issei looked to his savior to see a beautiful woman. She had sky blue hair cut short except for 2 extremely long and thin braids that went to her knees. Her bust was larger than average and was covered what seemed to be a white bikini top made of cloth. Her pink eyes shone with wisdom and a tint of hatred. She had white sleeves that drooped from her elbows to her wrists. The sleeves were tied with a small golden string at the top of her elbows. A short skirt that barely passed the essential was tied around her by a wide blue ribbon the same color of her hair. In her hands was a crystal bow that seemed to be made out of the moon itself. State your name, man beast. His savior said as she also notched what seemed to be an arrow of pure power. Ah. Issei said to himself. This was Artemis. Or what he assumed was Artemis. Tiphos had told stories of her great hunts against his children. Tiphos did not hate her, however. She wasn't as stir-crazy as her ex Orion. Now that guy apparently was a beast. I'm Issei. The 8-year-old said. Not wanting to reveal he was the son of the king of monsters. That might be bad as he was surrounded by the goddess of the hunt and her huntresses. Artemis drew her arrow at the boy's head. Return from the place whence you came, man beast. Do so while I am still merciful. Artemis stated, which got coos from her huntresses telling her how merciful and kind she was to such a pathetic man beast. But I don't have any place to go. My home was destroyed by a monster of a man. Issei said. It was kind of true as Hercules did kind of kill his mother and father. Artemis felt a droplet of pity for the boy. He couldn't be older than 10 and his home was destroyed by some terrible man. Then an idea popped into her head. This boy was still innocent compared to any others. And she could mold that. Make him a perfect man. Not a beast, he could the one to change the world. Artemis dropped her bow, which disappeared into glowing dust before it could hit the ground. I am sorry to hear that, Issei. Men are terrible creatures that cannot be trusted. Artemis got nods from her huntresses. But why are you here? Who brought you here? Issei kind of froze, which brought suspicion back into Artemis. Well, there is this voice that is kind of talking in my head. He was the one who saved me from the monster man. He calls himself Issei drifted off. He calls himself Tiphos. The Beast King screamed, which got all of the women to draw their bows once again. I am the one who brought him here, Artemis. He needs to be protected from you know who, and you're the only one who could do so. Tiphos continued. Artemis had summoned her bow once again, narrowed her eyes. Tiphos, I thought my father got rid of you. And what makes you think I would protect this beast of yours? I thought he was still innocent, but if he has you talking in his head then he must be put down. Artemis stated. As if you could bring my son down. Tios said. His usual stubbornness getting in the way of a discussion. You shall protect him because I ordered so. Your power is nothing compared to mine. But if you must know, Issei needs divine protection. You know who would sniff him out and crush him. And why should I? Why can't I let him be crushed by that brute? This child is a danger to us all. And I will not hesitate to put his soul to Hades. Artemis continued. Her arrow drawn and pointed at Issei's head. He's a mere child, Artemis. Please, he is my son and I can do nothing but train him. His parents were killed in front of his eyes, Artemis. I only ask for a year with him. Which is a second to you and your posse. A year is all I ask. Tios begged, his stubborn demeanor broken. Fine. I, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, grant you, Issei Tiphon, divine protection under my care. You shall serve me and my huntresses as a slave until you prove yourself worthy. Artemis stated in a more traditional manner. Ooh, a master-slave relationship, huh? That's kinky, baby brother. I'm proud of you. Well, so much for Layton not being a pervert like the rest of his family. The Hydra was laughing hysterically at Issei as he groaned and followed behind Artemis and her posse. The huntresses shouted insults at Issei as they continued to ask Artemis if they could just kill the now-dubbed man-beast. Even at 8 years old, Issei Tiphon was now being forced into being a slave by a goddess. What a life he's going to be living. You should have seen the look on your face when you woke up. Wahaha. The Hydra cried. It only took a couple more minutes before the group of females and their slave reached a large tree. Wider than any tree Issei had ever seen. At the base was a stone temple/castle that could only be described as massive. Artemis let her huntresses give Issei the tour. And his job schedule. He was going to be making arrows for them from 5 in the morning till 8. Then he would carry the arrows he made around with him in quivers as the women went on their daily hunt. He would then clean the entire castle top to bottom every day. And from the looks of it, that would last nearly an entire week, but the boy would be forced to do it, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to sleep. Speaking of sleep, he wasn't even given a bed. He would be sleeping in the stables for the year. To which Issei thanked them profusely, making the women confused. When he explained that he had slept in a cave for the past 3 years, the women decided he wasn't allowed to sleep in the stables as it was too much of a commodity and now would be forced to sleep on the dirt outside of the castle. He was to make his own blankets by tomorrow if he wanted to be warm. When asked what he was going to be eating, they handed him a bow and a single arrow and said to go hunt. Issei sighed, he was used to grueling training. But this was straight up bullying. 3 years ago he would be whining why the women were being so mean to him, but now he just went with him. Truly, his maturity was beyond his years. Issei decided that he was too tired to do anything but sleep. As Artemis's huntresses went off to sleep in whatever comfy beds they were given, Issei took one of the bottom steps of Artemis's temple and laid flat on his back. This is going to be such a pain. Receiving a sharp kick to the stomach as an alarm isn't the best way to wake up. But if that's how you've been living for the past 3 months, then one would get used to it. Issei, the youngest son of Tios, has been kicked in the stomach and sent flying down a flight of stairs by Artemis's gang in the name of protecting their goddess from his man-pig terrors. And to say the least, Issei hated them. He wasn't even given a chance to try and change their minds about men. Nope. It was wake up at 5 and make so many goddamn arrows for 3 hours and to be their errand boy for the rest of the day. Tios insists that this is the only way to stay away from Zeus. Issei's new father insists that this 100 times better than what Zeus would do if he finds Issei. And the boy could only shiver at the thought of what the king of the Greek gods could do. Currently, Issei was in the workshop working on arrows for the huntresses. He had a stack running right now as he worked and roping an arrowhead to the shaft. A knock on the stable doors made Issei look up and stiffen. In the doorway was a very tan woman. She had dark red hair and a hunting cloak that covered most of her body to match her hair. Her golden eyes looked at him with a mix of curiosity and mischievousness. Her ponytail, which she usually held behind her, was swung around her shoulder. Behind her were the other huntresses snickering at whatever this woman was going to do. Well, look what we have here, girls. Looks like the boy pig has been getting better at making our arrows. The woman sauntered over and leaned down next to Issei. And look at this. He hadn't even finished making all our arrows. The woman said. What are you talking about? I've got 150 arrows right here. Issei motioned to a large bundle of arrows. Counting just above 150 fully made arrows. I only see 100. The woman said as she slammed her boot through the bundle, breaking nearly a third of Issei's work completely in half. And you know what that means. Please, I'm sorry, I'll do better next time. Before Issei could finish, a boot was put into his gut. The goddess posse started to giggle behind the woman. They were currently blocking out the view from outside. As more women surrounded the boy, the leader continued to kick the downed boy as more of Artemis's huntresses joined into the fray. For a few minutes, nothing was heard from the inside of the stable except crying, giggling, and the sound of leather boots hitting flesh. After a while, the women grew bored and decided to leave a defeated and bruised monster prince. Issei cried in place as flashbacks of being alone echoed through his mind. Issei. Issei, can you hear me? It's your big sister. Come on, you have to answer me at some point. The Hydra berated him. Her only response was some whimpers. Issei, if I had a body I would have destroyed these women. You are not alone. Do you hear me? We may be voices in your head, but we are family. And the family has got to stick together, right? Tifo's voice echoed through the young monster prince's head. Right. Before Tifo's could continue, the doors to the stable burst open. A short man in a light blue toga and winged sandals desperately searched through the stables until his eyes landed on Issei's crying form. Kid. The man yelled. As he sped to Issei, he slid on his knees until he was right next to the young monster prince. Oh, kid, I'm so sorry. I saw the huntresses leaving here and giggling. I came as fast as I could. The man said as he started to shake Issei to stop him from crying. Issei looked up at the man. Issei's dark green eyes met with a lime green pair of eyes staring right back at him. The young monster prince jumped up and looked at the man. Uncle Hermes. I thought you weren't coming yet. Issei said as he tried to clean up. I'm so sorry. I probably look like a mess right now. Just give me a few minutes and I will meet you out back. Issei was cut short by the newly dubbed Uncle Hermes, wrapping his arms around the boy. Kid, this isn't good for you. I'm going to go tell Artemis, she'll move you somewhere else. Hermes pushed Issei back. The messenger god's hand still on his shoulders. No. You can't tell Artemis. She'll punish me like the huntresses. I know she will. I just need to get better and then she won't hit me anymore. That's how everything works out, right? Issei said as he continued to rant on how to prove himself. This isn't healthy, Issei. They are beating you. This isn't like ancient Greece, the huntresses should not be beating you. Remember when I found you? What did I say to you? A month earlier. Hermes was a lot of things. The messenger gods. Zeus's assistant in all things political and even a darn good fighter when push comes to shove. But what Hermes was not was to be a mailman for Athena just because she is too lazy to teleport to her own sister. And this isn't the first time either. Athena has been sending Hermes on errands for years now without even a thank you from the goddess of wisdom. At least Artemis will teleport. Hermes would be bald from pulling all his hair out because both goddesses were too lazy just use magic. It's your job, she says. I'm the messenger of gods, damn it. Not some tool to be used by goddesses. Hermes complained. He was currently giving a message about a certain monster king being released and to keep a lookout for any signs of a small brown-haired boy named Issei. However, before he could reach the goddess of the hunt's temple, Hermes passed through Artemis's stables. This would have just been a little checkpoint before reaching the temple. Hermes would have gone past it without any care of what was inside. However, something strange passed through the messenger god's ears. It was the sound of crying. But not just any kind of crying. But male crying. Particularly of a child's kind. Why the hell would a man be here? And a kid at that? Hermes said to himself as his curiosity overcame anything else. Hermes entered the stable to see a battered and beaten boy on the ground. Oh my Zeus. Hermes said as he rushed to the boy's side. Kid. You alright? Did the huntresses do this to you? Hermes asked. For some odd reason, a parental nature kicked into Hermes. Issei mumbled a yes. To the messenger god. Why the hell would they do that? But more importantly, what on earth are you doing here in Artemis's stable? She's protecting me, Issei replied. From who? Because it's sure like she isn't doing a really good job of protecting you, kid. Hermes asked again. Zeus. Zeus. Why would Zeus want to hurt you? The messenger god asked. Because of this. Issei didn't know why. But against his surrogate father's protests, he revealed the monstrous gear to Hermes. Holy shit. You're the host of Tifos. It all made sense now. Artemis is secluded enough to not let Zeus know, but still, Issei would have the protection from a goddess. That means you are Issei. It's a pleasure to meet you. You can call me Hermes. The god stuck out his hand, which Issei wearily took it and gave a soft shake. Hermes, as in the messenger god. Are you going to report me to Zeus? Issei asked. Too tired to even defend himself if Hermes was to strike at the young monster prince. Hey, that's not really my style. When push comes to shove, I'd rather skedaddle. Hermes, trying to cheer up the crying boy, did a little dance motion with his sandals. This gained the laughter of the small nut-haired boy. You're funny, Mr. Hermes, Issei said as he continued to laugh. Nah, just call me Uncle Hermes. The god said as he ruffled the young boy's hair. Okay, Uncle Hermes. The monster prince said excitingly. So why did those girls go on and beat you up? Hermes asked in a little more serious tone. Issei stopped giggling and looked at the ground slowly. They call me a monster and boy pig. They say I shouldn't even be able to look at Artemis. Then they hit me if I do something wrong. Issei then proceeded to just reveal his whole childhood story to Hermes. Damn kid. That's really ed up. Like I've heard quite a few tragic backstories back in my day. But this takes the cake right here. Haven't you ever thought of running away? Where would I go? Artemis is the only one willing to protect me. If I just prove it to her that I'm good enough to be here, then the girls won't hurt me anymore. Issei said as he brushed himself off. Hermes looked at a watch he had on. Oh crap. I've got a few letters to deliver. I'll be here tomorrow, maybe we can train you to be faster. That'll blow Artemis's socks off, I just know it. And remember, you're the prince of monsters, aren't you? Nothing can bring you down. Hermes echoed as he was gone in a flash. Present times. I'm the prince of monsters. Nothing can bring me down. Issei yelled. That's the spirit, kid. Now let's go train for a few hours. I got some time off, and by the end of the day I've got a special present for my favorite nephew. Hermes grabbed Issei by his collar and dragged him into Artemis's hunting grounds. Hermes's training isn't for the faint of heart or feet for that matter. But when your personal trainer can make an obstacle course in a forest with the snap of a finger, you've got your work cut out for you. Again. Hermes yelled. The messenger god threw a sword at Issei at blinding speeds. Only to miss the young monster prince by the hairs on his head. With rings of fire, pillars, and sharks as your weekly training, one would expect to gain not only speed, but muscle mass too. In this case, Issei was more than fit for his age. Not rippling muscle or anything like that, but oddly buff for an 8-year-old. His speed had gone up considerably over the past month. Thanks to the help of Hermes and Tios. He was nearly able to break the sound barrier with the help of the monster skier, of course. Jumping of a pool of acid and pushing back sharks made of lava, Issei made another lap around his uncle's obstacle course. Alright kid. That's enough, make it a rap or whatever the kids say nowadays. Ah. But I can go a few more laps before I run out of energy. Issei whined. Making the messenger god chuckle as he ruffled his surrogate nephew's hair. I bet you do. But your uncle Hermes has an actual job, remember? I'm the almighty messenger of the gods. The fastest of the fast. The quicker than the quick. The speediest of the speedsters. Hermes puffed out as making the little boy giggle in innocent glee. You're so funny, Uncle Hermes. Of course, I know you're the fastest of the fast. Why do you think I want you to train me and not someone else, huh? Issei said. And Hermes just playfully pushed his shoulder. Cheeky brat. You made me this way, Uncle Hermes. Am I really that bad of an influence? Yes. The three monsters in Issei's head screamed aloud. Alright. Sheesh. You don't have to rub it in. Oh. And before I go, Hermes held up a finger while his other hand reached into his infinite satchel. Soon enough he pulled a pair of sandals completely identical to the messenger god's own winged sandals. Issei immediately grabbed them and slipped them on his currently bare feet. Suddenly he started to hover. Then he immediately crashed into the dirt face first. THNNKS, Uncle Heems. Came the muffled voice of Issei Tiffin. Hermes gave a helping hand up to the nut-haired boy. No problem, kiddo, just think of this as a welcoming gift. Because after you show Artemis your newfound speed, she will have to bring you to Mount Olympus. And don't worry about Zeus killing you, kiddo. I'll vouch for you. Hermes gave a sly wink and poofed into a blue dust cloud back to his job. Well, baby brother. You already have a god in your back pocket. Hermes is a nice fellow, I have to say. Whenever he came to visit my garden, he would bring 100 apples for each of my heads. He's a real considerate dude. You're lucky to have him. Landon said. As his voice faded, his father's popped into his head. Now why don't you go show Artemis who is boss? She'll be the first of your many mates. Tios continued. Dad. Later that night. For those wondering what mystical artifact Layton had given his little brother. Then look no further. No, seriously, Issei is currently at the target range. Multiple moving targets moving side to side and swinging by a rope. It was a contraption that Artemis had built herself to aim. Issei was currently wearing a blindfold similar to Layton's scale color. In the young monster prince's hands was a boar with the arms made of a navy blue metal. Blood-red tips extend from the points of the handle, giving the bow a sickening look. The bow has details etched into it. Little dragon heads stretch from the handle up to the tip of the bow. This is Hesperide's bow. A marvelous weapon that magically generates a black steel arrow from the user's reserves. The power of said weapon allows the target to shoot 100 arrows with the power of a regular arrow. Or one arrow with the power and speed of 100 arrows combined. Issei had been practicing with a new weapon for the past 3 months. He was even able to shoot 2 arrows with the power of 50. And if he was lucky, tonight he would be able to divide the power of the arrows even more. His marksmanship was a little sloppy. compared to the huntresses and Artemis. But that was a give-in. No one, and I mean no one, could ever match Artemis in a shooting contest. But he was above average. And besides, who needed to aim when you can literally shoot 100 arrows at once? Breathe, baby brother. Your eyesight is not the only thing you can rely on. We've been training like this from day one. Can you repeat the mantra? Layton's voice echoed through Issei's head. 1. Listen, my targets will make more sound the more nervous they are, so be aware of any mistakes that they make. 2. Feel, the wind is my friend, the wind will guide my arrows, all I have to do is feel. And 3. Magic, everything has a magical energy, if I can find its source I can kill it. Issei repeated. Layton had made sure Issei said it 100 times for each of his heads. Very good, baby brother. Now follow those steps and release your arrow whenever you are ready. Layton's voice faded as Issei took a breath. A small breeze passed through the range as Issei pulled back the string of the bow. The sound of ropes straining under the weight of the swinging target made it easy for Issei to pinpoint exactly where he was aiming. After another breath, Issei released. Thunk. Taking off the blindfold, Issei saw his arrow had hit the target dead on. Yes. Take that, Artemis. One day I'll beat you. He declared into the night. Very impressive. But I doubt you'd ever reach my level with what you are doing now. A voice said. Making Issei whip his head so hard that he cracked his neck. Artemis, Issei screamed a manly scream as the hunting goddess chuckled. It is I, the ultimate and terrible hunting goddess, Artemis said mockingly as she walked over to the little boy who had fallen on his butt. I'm sorry, Artemis, I didn't mean to use your range. I just wanted to impress you. Issei said as he bowed. Please don't hurt me. Issei, why didn't you tell me? Artemis replied to the bowing boy. Issei looked up to the blood-red eyes of Artemis. Tell you what? My huntresses, how they hit you, why didn't you tell me? Artemis asked as she crouched down to the now quivering boy. How did you find out? Hermes told me everything. He's had enough, he can't bear to see you get beat like this every day. And he's right, they can't do this to you. So I ask again. Why didn't you tell me? Artemis asked more in a more demanding tone of voice. Issei's eyes widened at the fact that his uncle told Artemis. I was afraid. Afraid of what? I was afraid you would hit me like the huntresses, Issei mumbled. Artemis eyed Issei. She shuffled closer and laid Issei down. His face was facing the stars as the goddess of the hunt laid next to him. I may hate men a little bit. Issei looked at her accusingly. Okay, I may hate men a lot. And I may say that men are awful. But you are just an innocent child. And beating a child just because he has something I don't have in my pants is a little much. I hate men because they are a boorish and crude race. But you probably don't even know what a vagina is. Artemis continued. What now? Issei asked innocently. You prove my point. Artemis rolled to her right, her head leaning on one of her arms. Issei, I've decided I need a break. And I can't leave you here knowing that my huntresses will beat you willy-nilly. I vowed to protect you, and I'm doing a pretty bad job of doing that. So Issei, Tiffin, you will be accompanying me on a vacation. Oh really? Where are we going? Issei asked. We're going home, to Mount Olympus. You would think it would be easy to Mount Olympus from Artemis's hunting grounds. At least, that's what Issei thought. But after an actual month of trekking and camping in mountains, woods, swamps, you name it, one tends to get a little cranky. So when your first night camping is actually in the same sleeping bag as the goddess of the hunt, things can a little awkward. Currently, Issei was walking next to the blue-haired goddess as he carried a backpack full of gear. It was nearly 10 times his weight, but it looked like the young boy was unfazed. He was thinking back to that first awkward night of hiking. What do you mean you only brought one sleeping bag? Issei screamed as he put his hands into the air. I thought you would get cold. You will now be sleeping with me so you won't get cold. Artemis said blankly as she opened up the sleeping bag and gestured for the young boy to enter. Aren't you supposed to be the goddess of maidenhood? You would think I shouldn't be anywhere near your proximity, Issei sighed as he questioned the goddess's antics. Bed in the sleeping bag or I shoot you with 100 arrows. Artemis threatened. Yes ma'am. Issei squealed. The past month had been practically the same conversation each night until Artemis threatened to get in the sleeping bag. And soon enough, the young monster prince found her presence comforting. Almost as much as the 3 voices in his head. I'm telling you, kid. She likes you. So man up and take the goddess of maidenhood's maidenhood. Tifo screamed into the young monster prince's head. I'm 8 years old. Screamed Issei internally as the monster king's children chuckled in the young boy's head. Is something the matter, Issei? His goddess companion questioned only for Issei. We must make haste. If we reach that large tree it will only be a week until we reach Mount Olympus. Nothing is wrong, Artemis, just Tifo screaming in my head about your maidenhood, Issei answered bluntly, making Artemis stop dead in her tracks. Can I castrate Tifos before we move on? Artemis asked with a sweet smile and a deadly aura as Issei chuckled and backed away nervously. I don't think you can castrate something that doesn't have a body, Issei said, making Artemis eye. Tios, I swear to God, if you try to take away Issei's innocence before I can teach him proper respect to women, I will somehow find a way to resurrect you only to castrate you. Do I make myself clear? Why yes ma'am, Tios said aloud as Eaton and the Hydra were busting their metaphysical guts laughing. And that reminds me. Tonight's lesson will be about how to treat a woman. Artemis said, pointing a finger in the air as they made their trek through the woods. For the past month, Artemis has been slowly cultivating Issei into the perfect gentleman. From proper etiquette in situations to how to woo a willing woman. Hoping that one day, Issei would become the only man she could learn to love. And somehow, she had kept his innocence intact and as you saw, will break universal laws to keep Issei's mind as clean as possible. And it seemed to be working. When Artemis invited Issei into her sleeping bag, he asked if it was okay. Every time. And he would never try to fondle her, even in his sleep, he lies his back to her, even when she tried to make certain advances. Sooner or later, Issei will become the one and the only man to earn Artemis's love and respect. At least she hoped that would be the case. Artemis smiled at her inner thought and plans for the future. She had already gotten plans for their third child after they had been married for a few years. He would be the most romantic and perfect gentleman anyone will ever see. All she had to do was keep some certain hussies away from Issei at Olympus. Like that damn Aphrodite. Artemis was brought out of her thoughts of strangling Aphrodite by Issei, who had tapped her on the shoulder. What is it, Issei dear? Artemis asked almost too sweetly. It's getting kind of dark out. Do you want to set up camp while I gather some firewood? The young boy asked. He unloaded his backpack as Artemis gave a silent nod. And Issei ran off into the woods looking for some kindling and firewood for his companion and himself. Into the forest. The forest was oddly silent for Issei. And oddly stickless. The trees seemed to move back and forth even if there was no wind to push the branches. Slowly it got darker and darker. If you want a good song for this, look up Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden, whispers kept crawling through Issei's ears as the trees moved around. What a cutie, I bet you'll make the perfect snack, a voice echoed throughout the forest. Issei whipped his head from left to right, trying to find the source of the voice. Tios. Eaton. Hi Sama. Are any of you there? Issei mentally cried as the fear in his heart grew and Baby brother, I need you to stay perfectly calm. Do not make any noise. There are things in this forest that should not be here. Make your way back to Artemis, she shall protect you. Whoever these things are, they are not friendly, Eaton said as his voice echoed through the monster prince's head. Be duly noted, Issei said to his surrogate older brother. As he slowly started walking backward towards Artemis's camp. He moved his eyes all throughout the dark forest. As he summoned the Hesperide's bow. Readying an arrow, he watched closely as the trees seemed to move closer and closer to him. Before he realized it, he bumped into something that shouldn't have been there. He turned around to see a tree in the middle of the path. That wasn't there before, Issei said as suddenly arms wrapped around the young monster prince's torso. Issei. Cried his mental guardians. All of them worried about the poor 8-year-old boy. Issei was raised off the ground as he kicked and screamed as the tree in the path suddenly turned into a beautiful green-haired woman. Red eyeshadow surrounds her eyes. As her dress turns out to be made of vines and leaves. Look at we have here, girls. A little boy toy has wandered into our neck of the woods. You sure are a cutie. I'll be sure to treat you well, the woman said as she sauntered over to Issei. Goddamn nymphs. I wanted my son to lose his virginity early. But not this early. You unhand him right now or you will feel the wrath of the king of monsters. Tios screamed aloud. I'll rip your punt little head in half if you touch my little brother. Then I will melt your body until it is nothing but a pile of boiling goop. And so help me, Zeus, if you even try to take off his pants. The Hydra cried in protest as she watched the nymphs giggle at each other. Knowing that the monsters are powerless to protect the boy. And don't get me started on what I would do if you try to harm my baby brother. I'll personally slaughter your entire forest, family, and friends as I watch them slowly burn from my green hellfire. I will destroy you. Eaton screamed as the nymph reached for Issei's pants. The other nymphs giggled as Issei started to cry. His pained sobs annoyed the nymphs as one of them slapped Issei. Stop crying, you brat. You'll learn to like it over the years. You'll be a real keeper, as the other nymphs giggled again and again as the nymph in front of Issei got onto her knees. Before she could pull down the pants. An arrow shot straight through her head. The glowing energy arrow instantly killed the nymphs as she dropped to the ground. The nymph holding Issei down pulled a knife and held it towards his throat. Show yourself. Or the brat gets it. Screamed the nymph only for an arrow to lodge itself into her throat. Footsteps were heard down the path as Artemis continued to walk towards Issei. Her arrows always hitting their mark as more and more of the nymphs dropped to the ground dead. It was a mistake to ever try and touch him, you bitches. I thought women were supposed to be better than men, but it looks like you are nothing but a bunch of pigs yourselves. Artemis screamed. As she finally killed the last fleeing nymph. Haha. Serves them right for trying to harm my son. Let them burn in the flames of the underworld. I want Hades to burn their souls for all eternity. Tios cried triumphantly, only to realize that Issei was a crying mess on the ground. Issei. I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner. I thought you just ran away. But when you started to scream I'm sorry. Artemis kneeled down to the boy as she wrapped him up into a hug. Issei cried into the goddess's shoulder as she continued on. I will always protect you, my little bowman. You have proven to me that not all men are monsters, well maybe some of them are. But not all of them. And you showed me that women aren't a perfect race either. Now come, let's get back to the camp. Artemis said as she lifted up the crying Issei and walked back to the camp. It is okay, my little bowman. You were very brave back there. Don't worry, I'll always be there to protect you. Artemis cooed as she used her new nickname to the young prince of monsters. His sobs turned to sniffled, which turned to hiccups, which finally turned into steady breathing as he fell asleep. Artemis continued to pet the boy's back as they reached the campsite. She set the boy down into the sleeping bag and curled up next to him. Soon sleep overcame the goddess as she protectively spooned the young child. Issei's mindscape. Issei woke up with a start. Looking around, he saw volcanoes and fire surrounding him. As the barren landscape looks like the apocalypse itself, Issei started to get scared again. But here was the odd thing. The fire wasn't orange as you would expect. But a sickly green as purple, and jagged mountains went above the stars themselves. You look a little puny to be my brother. A voice echoed throughout the barren wasteland, causing Issei to scream. As the voice chuckled. Do not be alarmed, young one. I am one of the many new voices in your head. Came to the voice as suddenly a ginormous two-headed hound appeared in front of Issei. Whoa. You're super cool, Mr. Dog. Do you control fire? Why do you have two heads? What weapon do you give me? Issei asked rapid-fire questions, making the dog's heads chuckle. We are Orthrus. The original guardian of the underworld before Cerberus took over. We are the most powerful of Tifo's children, as we can melt anything with our green hellfire flames. Orthrus answered, making Issei go starry-eyed. Whoa. That's so cool. Do I get to use your flames? Can I? Issei said, jumping up and down. Of course, young one. But we must practice with your weapon first, Orthrus answered as he swiped his left paw into the air, making a weapon appear in Issei's hands. It was a large double-headed spear with one curved blade on either end facing opposite directions. It seemed to be made out of some sort of golden metal as green flames surrounded the blades and handle. It was warm but not hot to the touch. Issei squealed in childlike glee as he ran off to go and train with his newfound fire powers. Orthrus chuckled as he ran off to help train his little brother until the young monster prince awoke. He would have a long journey ahead and he needed all the help he could get. On the trail. Issei woke up to slightly moving up and down as he realized Artemis was carrying the young monster prince piggyback style. Good morning, my little bowman. I'm sorry we skipped breakfast, but I assumed you needed your sleep after last night. Suddenly memories flashed through Issei's mind of last night. The sight of those nymphs in his head nearly brought him back into a sobbing mess. But a question stuck through his mind. Hey Artemis. Yes, my little bowman. Artemis replied using her nickname for the young monster prince. Why did you save me? I mean, I know you promised and everything. But I'm a man, right? Don't you hate men? Wouldn't you just want to let me die so you could return to your forest? Issei asked, making the blue-haired goddess eye. That requires a little explanation. You see, I'm lonely. Of course, my huntresses keep me occupied. But I need someone of substance. And when you came along you were something new. Something exciting. And I couldn't let you go. But when Hermes told me about my huntresses beating you, I don't know what came over me. But there was this desire to help you in my heart. Artemis stopped and set Issei down as he started walking next to her. And when we talked on the hill, I came up with a plan. You are still my innocent little bowman. And if I can watch you grow into my perfect man, I would finally have something of substance. You would be the only man to ever come close to me in terms of love. But then last night happened, Artemis continued. Yeah, Issei sighed out. And I realized something. I watched those nymphs look at you with lust that men would usually do with me. And like me, you didn't want that. And the thought struck me. The roles were reversed. In all my life I always looked at men in disgust because of their greed. I believed that only women would be the saving grace of our kind. But I was wrong. And I see that now, so I want to prove myself to you. And to myself that we don't have to be greedy. But just look after each other instead. Artemis continued her speech only to be stopped by Issei hugging the goddess's leg. Thank you, Artemis, I mean it. I hope that one day I can prove to be that perfect gentleman. Not only for you. But for my dad to stop screaming in my head about taking virginities. Issei yelled the last part. Artemis chuckled as she looked ahead. In the clearing of trees, she could see it. The outline of a massive mountain that breaks the clouds themselves. Olympus. Ha! Issei roared, a giant green fireball pops from the glaive as he spun it around assuming another defensive position. Aster. Ortherus yelled inside the boy's head. Spinning the double-pointed glaive until it became nothing but a green and gold blur, he pretended he was fending off a barrage of attacks as Tartarus fireballs shot out and random points destroying not large boulders but started uprooting and burning down massive oak trees. Sweat pouring down the young monster prince's face as he swung and stabbed the air as if it were his arch-nemesis. Roars of encouragement came from inside Issei's head as he continued to train. After getting another weapon added to Issei's arsenal, the many monsters inside Issei's head began harsher and harsher training. According to Tifo's calculations, in another year, Issei may be powerful enough to slay demigods or even lesser gods if he got lucky. The prince knew his power was raising as his magic pools were accessed by Artemis, only for her to nearly start screaming in shock at the raw power the boy emitted. Turning around, Issei took one last lunge only for it to nearly stab through Artemis's head. His harsh breathing was deafening compared to the silence of the goddess as she merely smirked and raised her hands in mock defeat. Oh no. The great prince of monsters has defeated the great goddess of the hunt. His power is overwhelming. No one can defeat him now. Artemis said playfully. Making the monster prince giggle like the child he was as he dropped his weapon and laughed triumphantly. It was an incredibly cute scene to watch as the two began to play around for a little while the two giggled in nothing but happiness. Soon enough, the little 8-year-old monster prince had gotten tuckered out and was lying down on the grass. The goddess of the hunt lay next to him. The small clearing the two were in showed the clouds moving by as the two sat in bliss. I like staring at the clouds, Issei said cryptically. Oh? And why is that, my little bowman? Artemis said sweetly. Issei rolled on his side as he looked at the blue-haired literal goddess in front of him. Well, when you live alone with nothing but a bunch of monsters in your head, you don't have much else to do but look up and stare at the clouds. You know, when I was little, Artemis started. You were little? Issei interrupted. Yes, Issei, even us gods had to be born at one point or another. Now don't interrupt. Now, where was I? Ah. Yes, long ago, when I, the great goddess of the hunt, was little. I looked up at the clouds as well. Artemis continued. Why did you look at the clouds, Artemis? Issei asked. I looked at the clouds, knowing that one day I would be able to shoot them down with my bow. I was very young back then. Now I know, one can't simply just shoot what is meant to be in the sky. I think you can do it. I think you can shoot down the clouds, Artemis, and when you do, I'll be right there with you. So we can share the cloud together, Issei said happily. It went unnoticed by the young monster prince, but a light blush dusted the goddess's cheeks as she turned away. I hope I get to share the clouds with you too, Issei. Artemis sighed as she rolled over to reveal a sleeping Issei. The goddess of the hunt smiled. A small smile, but a smile nonetheless. It had been a few days since the nymph incident, and Issei seemed to be fine. But he was too scared to ever go somewhere alone without Artemis being in eye range of the boy. She didn't know what scars Issei had, but she would work to mend what she could. Artemis picked up the young monster prince in a bridal-style fashion as she brought him to the camp. It was only half a day's walk before they reached the bottom of Mount Olympus, and with a little help from Hermes, the duo would be able to get up the mountain almost instantly. Sleep now, Issei, you will have quite the surprise for my father tomorrow. Let's just hope he sees it as a good surprise, Artemis said sorrowfully as she sat Issei down next to the base of the tree. And sat down with him. A protective arm around his shoulder as the boy's head leaned into her ample dot. The very next day. Issei woke up by the sound of metal falling on the ground. Opening his eyes and summoning his flail, Issei stood up, ready to attack whoever dared approach him and his goddess. Only to reveal Artemis backing up the pots and pans they used on their trip. Artemis looked up from her packing to Issei. Only to see him incredibly embarrassed as he put away the flail. SNRK Artemis tried to cover her laugh with her hand, but couldn't hold onto it for long, as the laughter finally erupted from the goddess of the hunt's mouth. Making Issei only have more blood rush to his face as it flushed to near volcanic levels. Layden was laughing uncontrollably in his head as Tifo's and the Hydra chuckled as well. Kicking a small stone to the left, looks like no one has my back today, Issei muttered. Oh, I wouldn't think so, kiddo, at least you have the great messenger god by your side, a very familiar voice appeared above Issei. Looking up, Issei saw Hermes floating upside down. His toga still hanging by his knees. Issei's smile grew to epic proportions as Hermes rubbed the young prince's head. Hey, there kid. Issei jumped up and grabbed Hermes by the torso, bringing the messenger god down onto the ground. flipping the young boy over so Hermes's feet touched the ground while Issei's head was only a few inches away from the dirt. Issei giggles madly as the boy simply hugged the messenger god's legs together. "Uncle Hermes." Issei shouted out. "Good to see you too, kiddo." Hermes smiled as he righted Issei up and set him on the ground. The messenger god looked up to see Artemis with a tick mark along her forehead. She was smiling evilly, making the god sweat drop. "And it's good to see you too, Artemis." "Yes, I wasn't expecting you so soon, Hermes. What on earth are you doing here?" The goddess of the hunt said, walking over to the young monster prince and ripped him from his grip on Hermes to bring Issei to her legs. "We weren't expecting you for another few days." Artemis seethed. The messenger scratched his cheek while looking down to Issei to see him reaching his arms out cutely to try and hug his uncle again, making the god chuckle and ruffle the young boy's head again. "Well, you know, I got out of work early, and who wouldn't want to spend time with their favorite nephew? And now we get to go to your new home. Isn't that exciting, Issei?" Hermes bent down to look Issei in the eye. "Yay. Mount Olympus." Issei whooped. "Now Issei, I'm going to need you on your best behavior. Zeus, the big guy who rules the mountain, isn't exactly friends with Tios, so you'll have to let us talk to him, okay? All you need to do is be the same old nice and adorable child you always are, okay?" Hermes said. Issei gave a small salute. "Sir, yes sir." Issei stated cutely. "That's my boy. Now let us go visit Mr. Zeus." And with that, Hermes grabbed hands with an excited little monster prince and a very annoyed goddess of the hunt. "Alright, I'm going to teleport us up to the mountain. And remember, try not to make a scene and no one will see us, okay?" Hermes looked down to Issei, who nodded. "And if some blondie in a red dress named Aphrodite tries to talk to you and I'm not around, run away until you find me, okay?" Artemis asked. "Why is that, Artemis?" Issei said with a cocked head. "Because she's a bitch. Because we want to show you off to everybody once we talk to Zeus, okay kiddo?" Hermes said, giving a glare to Artemis. "Okie dokie. Let's go. I want to go meet everybody," Issei said with a stomp of his feet. Hermes nodded. A dark blue magic circle appeared below them. A mixture of runes surrounded a wing as the three started to sink into the ground. At Mount Olympus, the entrance of the Pantheon's temple. Teleporting to Mount Olympus isn't as difficult as one would think. Just being in the good graces of a god and poof. A two-way ticket back and forth to Mount Olympus. And when your guardian is the daughter of Zeus and your uncle is the messenger god, you're practically an Olympian by that point. Hermes was acting like it was Mission Impossible, hiding Issei and himself around pillars and sneaking in what you would only see in a cartoon. He spun Issei around Ares's back and past Apollo with no problem. Those guys were easy to get past when you're faster than lightning. And the two gods were wiping their foreheads as they were walking up the steps of the Pantheon's temple. Hermes was making faces at Issei as he walked backward, trying to make the little boy giggle. When Hermes backed into something, he could only assume it to be a pillar. Turning around, however, he was face to face to Artemis's worst fear. Aphrodite. As you would imagine, she was absolutely beautiful. Beyond perfection, some may say. She had pearly white skin with a pair of crimson eyes with blonde eyelashes fluttering above them. She wore a toga that matched her eyes. It had a large V shape that nearly passed the belly button, giving of the view of the sides on the two enormous S on her dot. Her body could only be described as the envy of any supermodels, as the petite gave way to a large rear and toned long legs. You should watch where you're going, Hermes. It isn't safe to walk backward. When Aphrodite's eyes landed on Issei as he hid behind the messenger god's leg. The goddess of love leaned down. Her S practically bouncing at the sudden movement. She squinted her eyes as if in thought. Before squealing like she just saw her favorite celebrity. Quickly picking up the little monster prince and spinning him in her arms. After dropping Issei after a few more seconds of spinning, Artemis quickly picked up the prince and growled at Aphrodite. "Don't touch him." Artemis spat much to the goddess of love's jargon. Laying claim to a boy already? I didn't know our resident huntress was a shotgun," Aphrodite teased. "I'm not," Artemis retorted. Aphrodite pointed to Issei, who was hugging onto Artemis's left leg for dear life to hide from the scary blonde lady. "Then who is that?" That Hermes started as he zoomed around the goddesses and picked up Issei in a cradle fashion. "Is my nephew Issei Tiffin. I adopted the little brat a few months ago and I just need to get the okay from the big guy." Hermes pointed his thumb towards the entrance of the temple. "Tiffin, where have I heard that name?" Aphrodite thought for a few seconds, making the two gods nervous that she might rat them out before they can explain the whole thing. "You mean as in Tifo's Tiffin, the king of monsters? I thought he was sealed." Aphrodite pointed a finger at Issei, who unintentionally summoned the monster skier in fear. A few tears threatened to spill out. "But going, Aphrodite, you just scared my son. Look what you did." Issei is crying. "Didn't know the goddess of love could scare people." Tifos spoke aloud, making the three Greek gods gawk. "He has the monster skier." Aphrodite exclaimed, making Artemis put a hand over her mouth. We know, Issei has nowhere to go, and besides, would you rather kill him and see where Tios goes to next? Or keep an eye on him? Artemis said in a loud whisper. I am sorry. Aphrodite walked up to the sniffling 8-year-old and stuck out her hand. Hi there, Issei, my name is Aphrodite. I'm the goddess of love. I'm sorry if I scared you, but the big guy on your hand is kind of scary. Can we start over? The goddess of love asked. Hermes sighed as he put Issei on the floor. With a quick arm rub, the little monster prince gave a wide smile and shook the goddess's hand. Okay, Miss Aphrodite. I'm Issei Tios and the prince of monsters from around the world. The little boy said as politely as he could muster. Aphrodite held Issei's hand for a little while longer before bringing him into a bear hug. Oh. He's just so adorable. Before Aphrodite could spin him around some more, Artemis yanked the monster prince away. He's mine. Artemis yelled in jealousy as Aphrodite grabbed Issei's arm and Artemis grabbed the other one. No, Issei is mine. Aphrodite yelled. You just met him. I still have a decade before he turns 18. Hermes, having enough, grabbed the poor boy. He looked completely tuckered out, and that's not the best thing to be when you're about to meet the king of all Greek gods. Ladies. You're killing the kid. Give him some space, will ya? I mean, he is about to be interrogated by the big man himself. Oh, Aphrodite kicked a rock as Artemis looked away. Now let's get going, we might as well get this over with. Hermes put Issei under his arm and started up the stairs. God, I hope Zeus will be cool with this, Hermes muttered to himself. And do pray tell, what is so important? My husband must see it. A mature and womanly voice came from in front of the messenger god. Looking up, Hermes saw what could only be described of what the definition of a cougar looked like. Because in front of him was none other than the goddess of motherhood herself. Hera. With a lightly tanned skin and a beautiful heart-shaped face without a wrinkle in sight, if anything she only looked a year older than Aphrodite. And if Aphrodite was the essence of beauty, Hera came in a close second. Dark chocolate brown hair went nearly down to her knees as a golden tiara sat upon the goddess's head. She wore a cape of what seemed to be peacock feathers, and it was clipped to the front of her pure white toga, which only barely held the gigantic mounds of flesh on her, making Hermes drool a little before shaking his head in a comedic fashion. A mother. Both the goddess of the hunt and the goddess of beauty cried out, rushing to the messenger god's side. Last time I checked, I am indeed your mother, Hera stated coyly. Now what is so important that my dear husband is needed? Hera leaned forward to show a large amount of cleavage. She closed her eyes and smiled at the three younger Greeks. Mommy? Issei's voice cried out, making Hera open her brown eyes, which landed directly on the little boy who looked like he was about to burst into tears if he didn't get closer to Hera. Hera blinked a few times before standing back up. She walked calmly over to Hermes, who was holding Issei. The god was sweating bullets as Hera drew closer. And with a flick of the motherly goddess's arms, she scooped up Issei into a hug like no other. Motherly instincts had kicked in the moment Issei said the M-word. Which, if you hadn't guessed it, was mommy. Hera looked up coldly to the three gods, especially at the messenger god. Hermes, could you tell me who this poor child is? I assume his mother must be dearly worried that he is gone. Hera stated. Well, that's why we're here, Hermes said shyly as he put his fingers together. Oh? Hera said, making sure to hug Issei closer to her. Mother, it would be easier to explain if father was here as well. We are here to see if Issei can stay at Olympus. Artemis stated dryly. Internally seething as Issei looked calmer than ever in Hera's arms. Fine, but the little one stays with me. Hera said, sharply turning and walking back into the temple. But Artemis and Aphrodite started simultaneously. No buts. Hera nearly shouted without even turning around. Hermes turned around to the two goddesses, who looked dumbstruck and gave them a shrug of the shoulders and followed the goddess of motherhood inside. Soon enough, the two goddesses followed suit and entered the main temple. The temple was absolutely massive. Pure white marble columns were decorated with gold markings. Ranging from heroes to animals, the designs had it all. This was the largest of the temples on Olympus, as it was meant to hold all 12 major gods and then some. And when I say some, it could probably hold nearly all the gods in Olympus. The temple wasn't intricate architecturally, but more of a straight shot to a large circular room that looked like it was able to hold more than 2 football fields. The room had hundreds of levels and went up and down a few hundred feet in each direction. In the center of the room stood a massive pillar with 12 seats in a circle. The largest and most prominent seat held a handsome-faced blonde man. This was Zeus, ruler of Olympus. The 4 gods flew up to the pillar, Issei still in Hera's arms. The boy looked fast asleep. After the god and goddesses took their respective seats in the circle, Hera sitting directly right to Zeus did the king of Greek gods started talking. Hermes, Aphrodite, and Artemis. It has been a long while since I had seen you three in the same room. And it seems you brought a guest with you, Zeus boomed. That is correct, Zeus, that boy is Issei. Artemis had found him after his parents were killed by Hercules. Hermes stated, making Hera gasp and hug Issei closer. Zeus, however, narrowed his eyes. And however did he escape the clutches of that traitor? Zeus asked. A small sneaking suspicion crawled in the back of his mind. Hermes paused for a second, looked down. And then looked Zeus directly in the eyes. That is because he has the monster skier. Hermes dropped the bombshell, making Artemis and Aphrodite facepalm. If there was one thing someone shouldn't be with Zeus, is to be incredibly blunt. What? Zeus roared, nearly making Hera drop the boy who had woken up from his tiny slumber. Before Issei could even manage a word out of his mouth, Zeus had a lightning bolt aimed directly for Issei. I wouldn't do that if I were you, old friend, Tios spoke, making Zeus snarl with anger. You still have that classic short temper of yours, Zeusy? Tios snarked. Don't call me that. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't boil the brat's brains. Zeus yelled. But in case you forgot, Issei was currently in the arms of Zeus's wife. Zeus. No. You are not killing the boy. Hera stated calmly. Hera. Let go of that beast this instant. Zeus screamed. This only made the motherly goddess hold the monster prince tighter. No, Zeus. Issei is staying here. And that is final. Hera stated coldly. But honey. Zeus cried. Don't but honey me, Zeus. You need to keep your temper in check, husband of mine. Besides, he is just a boy. He could do no harm to us. Hera said coolly. But he could hurt us in the future. Zeus exclaimed. Yeah, he could kill us in the future. Or he could be the greatest asset to the Greeks to date. Think about it, big guy. If we kill the kid now, Tios will just go to another host. But if we keep Issei and train him, he could be unstoppable. Hermes said, and with a flutter of his wings, he flew around Zeus, slowly persuading the king of the gods. I suppose you are right about this, Hermes. You are smarter than I thought, Zeus said as he scratched his beard. Hermes gave a hard wink to Issei and Hera, making the goddess stifle a laugh and Issei giggle at how easy it was to trick the king of the gods. And besides, Hermes whispered into Zeus's ear. The kid is already calling the wife his mom. Don't you want to get that child-raising experience one last time? Hermes said. Zeus's eyes widened at what Hermes said as he looked over to Hera, who was lifting Issei by the armpits. The little boy laughing with glee. Zeus nodded his head with a small smile. Only if Issei calls me dad, Zeus said firmly. You got yourself a deal. Hermes said excitingly as he zipped over to Issei. Alrighty, kiddo. Welcome to Olympus. Hermes gave a thumbs up as Aphrodite and Artemis cheered along with Issei and Hera. Picking up Issei out of Hera's arms, who looked sad that the boy departed his presence, the messenger god put Issei on his shoulders as the 8-year-old monster prince laughed with happiness. Yay. Thank you, Uncle Hermes. The boy said as he hugged the man's head. Hermes chuckled. No problem, kiddo. Now let's go give you the all Hermes tour of Mount Olympus. Hermes zoomed out of the temple, making all three goddesses' eyes bulge. Wait for me. Artemis, Aphrodite, and Hera yelled in unison as they gave chase to the messenger god and the new resident of Mount Olympus. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nate Eaton for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.